I think the Corrupting Influence is one of my favourite Commander Precons in recent years. Most of the Commander Precons try to do too many things right out of the box, but the Corrupting Influence deck is pretty focused. Get poison counters on your opponents, and win the game. So let's take a look at the Precon and see how we can upgrade it for just 25 bucks. Let's quickly go over the two commanders in the deck. First up we have Ixhel, SCION of ATRAXA. For one generic, a white, a black and a green, you get a 2/5 Phyrexian Angel with flying, vigilance and toxic 2. And corrupted. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent who has 3 or more poison counters exiles the top card of their library face down. You may look at and play those cards for as long as they remained exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any colour to cast those spells. Now, before we go any further, let's quickly break down the difference between Toxic and Infect, as the deck has creatures with both of those abilities. A creature with Infect deals damage to a player in the form of poison counters, so a 2-power Infect creature would give a player 2 poison counters and would not change their life total. A creature with Infect also deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters, permanently reducing the opponent's creature's power and toughness. An important thing to note, this applies to any damage the creature deals, not just combat damage. So if you gave Goblin Sharpshooter Infect, it could use the ability to put either a poison counter on a player or a -1/-1 counter on a creature. A creature with Toxic, on the other hand, deals regular combat damage to creatures, and when they deal combat damage to a player, they deal regular combat damage, reducing their life total, and give them a number of poison counters equal to the number next to their Toxic ability. So Ixhel is a great card advantage engine. The more players we get to 3 poison counters, the more cards we get to make use of. Their ability also says you may play those cards instead of you may cast those cards, which means you can also play the lands you get off the ability too. Now, if you want to go down a more aggressive route, you can swap out Ixhel for Vishgraz the Doomhive. For 2 generic, a white, a black and a green, you get a 3/3 with Menace and Toxic 2. And when Vishgraz enters the battlefield, create 3 1/1 colourless Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. Vishgraz also gets +1/+1 for each poison counter your opponents have. So as you can clearly see, Vishgraz and friends want to get into the red zone and dole out as many poison counters as you can. I don't think the way I've structured the deck is optimal for Vishgraz, as I think with them you'll want to focus on creating, buffing and protecting your tokens. So if you want to see a deck specifically built around Vishgraz, let me know in the comments down below. Okay, on to the Ixhel upgrades. So to start, let's quickly look at the 4 lands I've added to the deck. Access Tunnel, Rogue's Passage, Mirrex, and Tyrite Sanctum. Access Tunnel and Rogue's Passage effectively do the same thing. For 3 mana, Access Tunnel lets a creature with power 3 or less become unblockable, and this pairs perfectly with Ixhel as they only have 2 power. Rogue's Passage does the same thing, but for 4 mana, and it can target any creature. And the fact they're both lands means you're more likely to keep these unblockable abilities around for the whole game. The Mirrex taps for any colour the turn it enters the battlefield, and then it can only tap for colourless after that. And for 3 mana, it can create a 1/1 colourless artifact might creature with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. The ability to create a threat every turn for just 3 mana is really good, especially because it's a toxic creature. And with all the abilities we have in this deck to make our creatures unblockable, you'll likely be able to kill someone with just a swarm of mites. The last land in this section is Tyrite Sanctum, and I think this card should be in every single commander deck. It taps for a colourless, and has, for 2 mana, we can give any legendary creature a +1/+1 counter and turn them into a god. Repeatable +1/+1 effects are great, especially when you're running a proliferate deck. And finally, it has pay 4, sacrifice Tyrite Sanctum, and put an indestructible counter on target god. So ideally we want to make Ixhel a god and then make them indestructible. That's not only going to make Ixhel difficult to remove, but they also become an excellent blocker thanks to their inbuilt vigilance ability. Okay, with lands out of the way, it's on to the creatures. Oh, what's this creature? Oh, it's just the subscribe button. Be sure to tap that for more upcoming Commander content, and tap that like button if you want to increase your luck on your next pack opening. Okay, first up we have Eternal Witness, a 3-mana 2/1 that has the ETB, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. As a pseudo Infect deck, your creatures are likely to be the target of removal, so Eternal Witness gives you the chance to give them a second shot at life. It's also an excellent way at fetching any of our previously used removal or even tutors out of the bin so we can use them again. Again, Eternal Witness is one of those cards that belongs in nearly every green deck. Next up, there's Bloated Contaminator, a new addition from Phyrexia All Will Be One. For 3 mana, we get a 4/4 with Trample, Toxic 1, and whenever Bloated Contaminator deals combat damage to a player, Proliferate. A really nice blocker and attacker in the early game, and that Proliferate ability is always relevant, especially when we pair it with the next couple of creatures. So the goal with this next set of creatures is to make sure your creatures are either unblockable or in such a way that your opponents don't want to block them. So first we have another commander favourite of mine, Sarith the Viper's Fang. For 4 mana we get a 3/4 that gives all your tapped and likely attacking creatures Death Touch and untapped creatures you control Hexproof. And for 1 mana and tapping Sarith, you can untap another target creature or land you control. So giving all of our 1/1 toxic or infect creatures Death Touch makes them that much more harder to block. And if your opponents aren't blocking your creatures, it doesn't matter how much life they're on, 10 poison counters and they lose the game. If Death Touch isn't convincing enough, how about Champion of Lampholt? Champion of Lampholt is a 3 mana 1/1 that says creatures with power less than Champion of Lampholt can't block creatures you control. And whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of Lampholt. Champion can get out of hand real quickly and works really well with our token generators such as Vishgraz, Phyrexian Swarmlord, and the Mirrex. If any of your opponents are playing tokens, they're going to have a hard time blocking your creatures with Champion on the battlefield. Our last new creature add-on to the deck is Park Height Mavericks. Park Height Maverick is a 3 mana 2/2 with Dethrone, which means whenever this creature attacks the player with the highest life total, it gets a +1/+1 counter. In addition, it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, so no chump blocking there. And lastly, whenever Park Height Maverick deals combat damage to a player or dies, Proliferate. So not only does this creature continue to buff themselves, they can also give opponents additional poison counters, it can put more +1/+1 counters on Champion of Lampholt, making our creatures even harder to block. Another excellent pickup. Moving out of the creature space, we've got 2 more enchantments to add to the list. First up we have Stronghold Arena, a 2 mana black enchantment that we can kick for a single white and or green. It says, when Stronghold Arena enters the battlefield, you gained 3 life for each time it was kicked, and whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. If you do, you lose life equal to its mana value. With the average mana value of our deck just being 2, Stronghold Arena is a nice cheap way to draw some extra cards, especially if our creatures aren't being blocked. Our final enchantment is probably the best card out of all the upgrades, and one I would look to pick up first. Here's Behind the Scenes, a 3 mana black enchantment from Shadows over Innistrad. This 3 mana enchantment gives all our creatures Skulk, which means our creatures can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. And it has an activated ability for 5 mana to give all our creatures +1/+1 until the end of turn. Combine this with Champion of Lampholt, and all of our creatures are now effectively unblockable. Moving on to artifacts, I simply swapped out Commander Sphere for Everflowing Chalice. This 0 mana artifact has Multi-Kicker 2 and enters the battlefield with charge counters on it equal to the number of times it was kicked. It then taps for colorless mana equal to that number. So effectively, Everflowing Chalice produces half the amount of mana you've put into it. However, because we run proliferate cards, we can easily increase the number of charge counters on this artifact and quickly increase the amount of mana it produces. Alrighty, on to the last section, Instants and Sorceries. For instance, I've added 2 more flexible pieces of removal with Mythos of Nethroi and Generous Gift. Generous Gift is an excellent 3 mana removal spell that can target any permanent and turn it into a vanilla 3/3. And Mythos of Nethroi is a 3 mana creature removal for just 2 colorless and a black, or if you spend a green, a white and a black, you can destroy any non-land permanent instead. Lauren's Escape is another excellent commander card I would look to add to almost any deck playing white. For a single white mana, we can give an artifact or creature, or most likely our commander, hexproof and indestructible. And as an added bonus, you can also scry 1. For sorceries, I've added Rampant Growth to help with our ramp, and I've swapped out the board wipes for White Sun's Twilight. White Sun's Twilight is the Infect version of Martial Coup. For 7 mana, you get to destroy all creatures, but leave behind a small army of Toxic Mites, which might just be able to knock out someone out of the game as players try to recover their board. The other board wipe is Dusk to Dawn, an excellent utility card. For just 4 mana, you can destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater, which is perfect because Ixhel slips right under that with just 2 power. And on the Aftermath side, you can cast Dawn for 5 mana, which returns all creatures from our graveyard with power 2 or less to our hand. Most of our Infect and Toxic creatures have 2 or less power, so being able to refill our hand is excellent. Diabolic Tutor is just a single piece of much needed card selection. It can help us grab either a board wipe, a piece of removal, or a way to make our creatures unblockable and win the game. Or it could potentially grab our sneaky win condition, which we're going to talk about now. The final card I added to this deck is Plane-Wide Celebration. This 7 mana sorcery can potentially win us the game out of nowhere. Let's quickly go over the card. For 2 green and 5 generic, we get to choose 4 modes, and we can choose the same mode more than once. So we can either create a multicolored 2/2 citizen creature, return target permanent card from our graveyard to our hand, we can proliferate, or we can gain 4 life. So let's look at it this way. Everyone knows once you're on 10 poison counters, you lose the game. But what if you've managed to get everyone to 6 counters? Well, now you can just simply cast Plane-Wide Celebration, proliferate 4 times, and kill the whole table. So there we have it. There's the $25 budget upgrade. If you're looking to splash some more money into this deck, I've added some suggestions in the considering section of the deck list on Moxfield, link in the description. If there are any other new Phyrexia Commander decks you would like to see, let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to check out this deck tech if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.